For most of human history, food did not come from markets, stores, or packaged shelves. It came from the land itself, from forests, rivers, mountains, and open plains. In ancient China, long before modern tools, refrigeration, or transportation, hunting was not a hobby or a sport. It was a necessity of life. For thousands of years, people depended on their ability to track, trap, and kill animals in order to survive. Some hunted alone, others hunted in groups, and many families hunted whenever farming could not provide enough food. In a world where hunger was always close, hunting was one of the most reliable ways to stay alive. Ancient China was not a single landscape, but many different worlds connected together. There were dense forests in the east, wide rivers cutting through fertile plains, frozen northern regions with harsh winters, warm southern lands filled with thick vegetation, and high mountains where only the hardiest people could live. Each of these environments offered different animals and different challenges. In the forests, people hunted deer, wild boar, rabbits, and birds. In the mountains, they hunted goats and wild sheep. Near rivers and lakes, fishing was often just as important as hunting on land. Because travel was slow and dangerous, most people hunted close to their villages, and many settlements were built specifically near forests or rivers for this reason. The land around you determined what you ate and how often you ate it. For most people, hunting was not a full-time profession. The majority of the population were farmers, and they spent most of their time growing crops. But during the early mornings, in the evenings, and especially in winter when the fields were quiet, hunting became a crucial activity. In times of drought, flood, or crop failure, hunting could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Meat was not just food, it was valuable. Animal skins were used for clothing and blankets. Bones were shaped into tools, and horns and sinew were used for many everyday objects. Almost nothing was ever thrown away because every part of an animal had a purpose. The most important hunting weapon in ancient China was the bow. Chinese bows were carefully crafted tools, often made from layers of wood, horn, and sinew. These composite bows were small, powerful, and surprisingly advanced. They allowed hunters to kill animals from a distance, which was far safer than getting close. A skilled archer could bring down a deer or a wild boar with a well-placed shot. Hunters practiced from a young age because accuracy mattered far more than strength. Arrows were made carefully and carried in simple quivers, and each one was valuable. Later in history, the Chinese also developed the crossbow, which was slower to reload but extremely powerful and accurate. It was used in both war and hunting, and in the hands of a skilled user, it could kill even large animals. Not all hunting could be done from a distance. Some animals had to be faced up close, especially in dense forests or mountainous areas where long-range shots were difficult. In these situations, hunters used spears and knives. This kind of hunting was far more dangerous. A wounded wild boar or deer could easily injure or kill a person. For this reason, many hunts were done in groups. Several hunters would work together to drive an animal into a specific area where it could be surrounded and killed. These group hunts required planning, coordination, and experience. They were risky, but they could provide large amounts of food for an entire community. One of the most important and efficient ways of hunting in ancient China did not involve chasing animals at all. It involved traps. Traps and snares were used everywhere, and they were made from simple materials like wood, rope, bone, and sometimes metal. Some traps caught animals by the leg, while others were hidden pits covered with branches and leaves. Some used bending branches and simple mechanisms to snap shut when an animal walked into them. Traps worked day and night, even while people were farming or sleeping. Hunters would walk long routes to check them regularly. This method was especially effective for catching small animals like rabbits, foxes, and birds, and it reduced the risk of injury. In many parts of China, hunting did not only happen on land. Rivers, lakes, and wetlands were full of life, and fishing was an essential part of survival. People used nets, hooks, spears, and woven traps to catch fish. In shallow waters, fish could be guided into enclosed areas made from sticks and reeds. In deeper waters, nets were thrown from boats or riverbanks. For many poor families, fish was a more reliable source of protein than meat from land animals because it could be caught more regularly and with less danger. Birds and small animals also played an important role in daily survival. Birds were hunted using bows, nets, and traps, while small animals like rabbits and squirrels were caught using snares or simple weapons. These animals were easier to find and easier to catch than large game. A family might only eat deer or wild boar a few times a year, but small animals could be caught much more often. They did not provide as much meat, but they provided steady food. Once an animal was killed, the work was only beginning. The animal had to be carried back, skinned, and carefully cut apart. The meat was often dried, smoked, or salted so that it could be stored for longer periods. In a world without refrigeration, preservation was just as important as hunting itself. Bones were saved and turned into tools. Skins were cleaned and turned into clothing or blankets, and fat was used for cooking or lamps. Almost nothing was wasted because waste was a luxury people could not afford. Hunting was dangerous work. People were injured or killed by wild animals, falls in difficult terrain, extreme cold, and infected wounds. There were no modern doctors, no antibiotics, and no reliable way to treat serious injuries. Even a small wound could become deadly. But despite the danger, people continued to hunt, because not hunting was often even more dangerous. Hunger was always waiting. In most communities, hunting was mainly done by men, but in some regions, women also trapped animals and fished. Children learned from a young age how to track animals, how to recognize signs in the landscape, and how to set simple traps. This knowledge was passed down through families and through generations. It was not written in books. It was learned by watching, practicing, and surviving. Over time, hunting also became connected to status and power. Emperors and nobles organized large hunting expeditions, partly for training, partly for entertainment, and partly to show their control over land and people. But for ordinary people, hunting was never a game. It was not a pastime. It was food. In ancient China, every successful hunt meant warmth in the stomach and life for a little longer. With simple tools, deep knowledge of nature, and a great deal of patience, people managed to survive in a world without modern technology. Today, food is easy to obtain, and hunger is distant for many. But for most of history, every meal had to be earned. This was life in the working past.